So there's two main discussions going on around the Diablo 4 community right now, and it really depends on kind of where you situate yourself in terms of a player on how you're going to perceive a lot of these discussions. And we have to keep in mind that the vast majority, I believe they said the significant majority in their dev stream, hasn't even completed the campaign yet. So with that kind of knowledge in mind, I want to talk about some of these kind of arguments or discussions around the community. The first one being Diablo 4 ends at World Tier 4. Now, first off, this seems odd to me, period, because if you say the game ends at World Tier 4, well, then you only care about the progression aspect and not the fun of the game itself. You care about the fun of progression, and I'll have some fancy drawings later on talking about that. But essentially, this argument comes from the idea that at World Tier 3, you have sacred items, which are just better items than before. They're the same items, they're just better. Now you also have uniques that can drop, and you unlock basically every piece of content that you can do for the rest of the game at World Tier 3, and World Tier 4 gives you no new content, besides potentially going ahead and doing the Uber Lilith fight, except you get ancestral gear, and again, some new uniques, right? Ancestral gear is literally just the same thing as sacred gear, where it's better than sacred. Same gear, better than sacred. So realistically, you're not getting much outside of the game. But I think what people are really talking about when they say the game ends at World Tier 4 is their progress as you increase throughout your time played in the game drops off a cliff. So what this kind of looks like is in your first initial 1 to 50 process, your progression kind of looks like this, where it's just like sort of a straight line. I would say kind of falls off a little bit of a curve, but it's very, very high, okay? Very, very high, very, very high. You hit 50, and this is the 1 to 50, okay? This little area right here, this is 1 to 50, right? It's part of my my fine there. And then as soon as you hit World Tier 3, this is World Tier 3, you go like this. Okay, I'm just chilling, boom, huge spike upwards. This is World Tier 3. This is T3 right here. And then it goes like this. Whoop, and then it kind of flatlines. Why? Because you're not getting any more skill points. You're not really getting any gear upgrades. The only thing you're getting is Paragon. So realistically, it kind of, if I were to just go back a little bit, it looks like this, and then it starts to drop off pretty hard, and then it looks very slightly like a small increase. Let me just draw that again. So you're looking like that. Okay, and maybe even smaller than that. And once again, this happens the same time once you reach Tier 4. Okay, we're going Tier 3, and then Tier 4. Boom, huge spike once again. This is what the progression feels like in this game. And then guess what? You do the same thing. And in fact, it's even smaller because now the levels, you're assuming this is like level 1 to 50. As I said, this is like 50 to 70. Again, this is your average player, and then this is 70 to 100. And this is almost like a flat line. Why is that? Because, in fact, it could even go down because of the level scaling. But the reason why is because the amount of time it takes to level between 70 to 100 goes insanely high. It takes about, I think it was like 5 million XP to go to 69 to 70, and then as soon as you get to 70, it's like 7.6 million. It almost doubles the amount of XP that you need quickly. So your progress drops off a cliff, and yet you're actually not changing anything realistically because there's no new content later on in the game. The only thing you're really doing is picking up a couple damage nodes in their Paragon board and overall min-maxing your build. Now, do I agree with this necessarily? I don't think so. I think around level 85 to 90 is kind of when you really start to see that there's very little to no progression because you have most of your Paragon glyphs, you have most of your build sort of more min-maxed, and at that point, the progress really starts to just completely flatline. 70 to 80 could still get some decent progression because the leveling's not quite as slow, but especially with the leveling XP reduction, this ends up being kind of a pretty rough thing. But here's the thing, most people aren't even in this part yet. Most people aren't even in World Tier 3 yet. So I don't really see this as being a huge problem within the game, but I do think that there is a problem with pacing in the game, because I don't think it's a good idea to just dismiss a whole group of players. And I think that even casual players, when you start to reach World Tier 3 in this situation, you might feel like the pacing of progression kind of feels a little bit slower. And that's kind of where I want to lead into the next conversation that's happening, which is seasons. This Twitter post has lit the casual world on fire. The vast majority of people are not used to ARPGs. Now, I'll say this first off. ARPGs traditionally have this sense of progression. The progression tails off very quickly, and then you get to experience your build. You might make an alt, and then in 2 to 3 months, boom, reset happens. And what that means is you don't necessarily get your character reset, but in order for you to participate in the new season, you have to create a new character. So you get to keep your old character and play on that. But for the new season, you have to create a new one in order to participate in the new seasonal content. And then after that season ends, usually that seasonal content transfers over to the Eternal Realm. And a lot of people seem annoyed about this, oh, we're not going to be able to go ahead and participate in the new season, etc. And I think that this is a very, very important thing to kind of consider, because I don't think the answer that is, it's an ARPG, you should have expected this, just don't play the genre, is a good solution in this case. If you're playing Path of Exile or Diablo 2, yeah, I kind of get that argument a little bit more, because those games are designed more core for the more hardcore audience. In this game, you have a lot of casual players, and in fact, they oftentimes have been advertising towards your average dad. And so, if that's the case, I feel like they need to go in a direction where, yes, we still have the seasons, you still have the seasonal content, and all that stuff is great, right? Because you want to encourage seasons, and at the same time, you have some way to incorporate the Eternal Realm into the conversation. Now, perhaps this is a little bit more of a hotter take, but I actually think that a lot of people immediately are opposed to seasons with this idea that, oh, I have to restart, it's not going to be as fun. But as you so beautifully drew earlier, the progression falls off a cliff. And I feel like people will start to see this, if you're a casual player, within the next few weeks, when you start to play a few more hours and you start to approach World Tier 3 and eventually World Tier 4 on the Eternal Realm. You'll reach a point where you're like, dang, I'm not getting anywhere. I kind of want to perhaps create a new character or create an alt. And some of the things transfers over. And I do understand the argument for things like, for example, not transferring renown between seasons, because people don't want to do that. But I think the seasons will actually be a little bit more casual friendly than people think, if they make a few changes, things like transferring the full renown between seasons, like side quests. Maybe you don't include dungeons, because dungeons are a natural progression mechanic, but give everyone the waypoints, the strongholds, the side quests, etc. That could be an option. And I see some people saying like, oh, that's just, you want it easy, etc. It's not about ease or hardcore. It's about fun. And this is where people get it lost in the conversation. People say there's an objective fun mechanic. Oh, it's objectively fun. Though no one can say anything's objectively fun, it's up for you to decide. And I think that in general, the hardcore players want to blast. They want to go through, they want to get progress, they want to compete on the leaderboards. They can still do that with or without renown being a grind or not. Okay. And in fact, they probably would just ignore the renown grind anyways, such as Rob did, for example, when he rushed to 100, because renown slows you down. Okay, and they could do that, or they could easily incorporate some mechanics to kind of make renown naturally progress. There's also so many other things to consider, but I think that they do need to push it in the direction of, hey, make things more enjoyable and have that sense of cross-seasonal progression. I heard someone say earlier, and you guys can let me know in the comments section down below if this is a correct assessment, and that is that PoE steered on the side of, oh, when you transfer between seasons, you do have some sort of overall progression, and I think that is what people are looking for more so than anything else. I personally view the overall progression of your account more important than potentially, oh, this specific character. I know some MMORPG players disagree, and that is totally fair because I am a hardcore Guild Wars 2 player and RuneScape player where I grinded out a lot of the levels. But the thing that I actually enjoyed most, similar to Guild Wars 2, is the overall achievement system and account progression where I could get global unlocks for my account. And hopefully they kind of steer this way with, Renown being more transferable, etc. I'm not quite sure, but I think this is an interesting discussion to have. And well, some of the things that are kind of involved in the community. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say, and I'll see you all in the next one.